treat your system's vulnerabilities, and request reattacks. Adequately treating your software's vulnerabilities is a fundamental step in risk prevention. On Fluid Attack's attack resistance management platform, you can define treatments and assign the team members responsible for applying them. Initially, you need to enter one of your groups and select the type of vulnerability you want to treat. Then, in the Locations section, click on the specific security issue to address, and choose Treatments from the pop-up window. A different way to do this is to click on the checkbox on the left of the vulnerability location and click on the Edit button. In this window, you can start by deciding the treatment applied to the vulnerable location. Bear in mind that you are not assigning a treatment to the whole type of vulnerability, but to this specific instance. Untreated is the default state for all identified vulnerabilities. However, you can select it when you wish to return the vulnerability to its default state, with no treatment. Select In Progress to assign the remediation of that vulnerability to someone in the group. Conversely, when you want to accept the vulnerability and the inherent risks that come with it, either temporarily or permanently, you can choose between those two treatment options. If you accept a vulnerability temporarily, you must select a deadline until which that treatment will apply. The last available treatment in the list is Request Zero Risk. In this case, you determine that the vulnerability doesn't represent any threat according to your organization's analysis. We will then process your request and remove the finding from the list if we come to the same conclusion. For all treatments, you have to write a justification. You can optionally include the bug tracking system issue URL. Assign the tags that you think are necessary to classify the vulnerability. And add a number between 0 and 1 billion. This will indicate the importance of this treatment for your organization. The treatment of permanently accepting a vulnerability always has to go through the approval of a user manager or a vulnerability manager. If you hold one of these roles, and a user of your team requests this treatment, you can click on the checkbox of the vulnerability in question and click on the Treatment Acceptance button. In this window, you simply have to select whether you approve or reject the request and leave your observations regarding the decision. Also, as someone with those roles, you can click on this button to get email notifications about the type of vulnerability in question. Going back to vulnerability assignment, you can click here to access your to-do list, where you can keep track of and manage all the vulnerabilities assigned to you. There you will quickly find out the security issues on which you need to take action. Both from the vulnerabilities as well as the locations section, you can request reattacks against vulnerabilities in your organization's software. Reattacks validate the effectiveness of your remediation efforts. This is something you can only request for vulnerabilities that are still listed as open and don't have pending reattacks. After selecting the vulnerabilities you want us to reattack, click on the Reattack button. Then, in this pop-up window, you must briefly explain the solution you applied to those vulnerabilities. In the Consulting section for that type of vulnerability, you can find out about results of requested reattacks. If you are using Squad Plan, these may contain additional comments by our hackers. In this Reattack column, you can see whether reattacks have already been requested for vulnerabilities and whether any reattack is waiting to be reactivated while certain events in the environment are solved. In the latter case, its status is shown as on hold. Additionally, after the reattack, you can learn if the type of vulnerability is still exploitable or not. If it is, the status would be vulnerable. If it's not, it would be safe. Our reattacks can undoubtedly bring you more peace of mind once you treat your vulnerabilities. With them, you get reliable evidence that those entrances for cybercriminals have been closed. Fluid Attacks, we hack your software.